What up, YouTube? This is Reezonoticz, and I'm here to do a video on why I believe the Nintendo 64 N64 is the greatest video game console ever constructed by human hands. Okay, I'm going to show off the system. I'm going to talk about some of its features. I'm going to talk about all of the advancements that it brought and introduced into the industry that have become mainstays that we gamers benefit from every generation thus far since the release of the N64. And I'm going to show you more than a handful of games on why it is the best console. Because in the end, that's what really determines a console, is games. Alright, so let's just get right into it. First of all, I want you to take a look at this beautiful design for the Nintendo 64. There you have the front deck. There you have the top-down view. The back. Alright. Beautiful design. I mean, you can just see the curves on this beauty, man. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry I'm talking about this like it's a woman, but it's just almost that good. Just look at it. I mean, this shit is bad. You know what I'm saying? You got, for the first time ever, which I'll talk about later, you got 4 controller ports in the front. You got your power switch, your reset button. You got your cartridge slot. Yes, I said cartridge. We don't need no damn CDs. Cartridge. Alright. You got the power supply port in the back right there. And your AV cables. And right here, you'll notice you got a little drawer that opens up, and that red thing that you see right there is the RAM pack, the expansion pack, which adds an extra 4 megabytes of RAM. Okay, so it came with the ability to be customized and modified, upgraded, if you will, and a lot of later games required it. So, yeah, let me just put this back on there. That's the system itself, the actual console. I'm sorry about that. That's the actual console. Now I'm going to show you the controller. Alright, this is my neon green transparent controller. Alright, and you see it, you got your analog joystick, your D-pad, your C buttons which control camera movement in most cases, your A and B buttons, your start button, your shoulder L and R buttons. In the back you have a Z trigger right there, and a slot which you can insert a controller pack, a rumble pack, or a couple of other accessories into depending on the game that you're playing. Alright, now that I've shown you the system and the controller, which is already sexy enough, I don't know why you haven't run out and bought this yet, I'm going to talk about some of the advancements that it brought to the table. Okay, first of all, like I said, let's look at the controller. Alright, this little doohickey right here was not here before the N64 came along. Ever since the N64, each console that comes out afterwards traditionally includes 2 of these. Okay, this is an analog joystick. Okay, this gives you an unprecedented degree of control in your gaming compared to the standard D-pad. Okay, in the 16-bit era, in the Genesis and the Super NES and everything before that, we had a D-pad, which was great, and that's why it's still there. But the N64 introduced the analog joystick, which instead of giving you 8 different directions, up, down, left, right, and in between, it gives you infinite directions, and not just infinite directions, but infinite amount of, let's just say, pressure. You know, if you want your character to run, you press it all the way. If you want your character to walk, you press it a little bit slightly less. If you want your character to tiptoe, even slightly less. So you can do a lot with the analog joystick, okay? And it's absolutely crucial and necessary for 3D gaming, which is another thing that the N64 introduced first. Okay, so that's the first thing, the analog joystick. Second thing, as we looked at the system before, we will do so once again. You'll notice 4 controller ports. Do your history, do your homework, go back and look at all the systems you've owned before. Before 1996, with the N64 debuted, you didn't have 4 of these. You only had 2, 1 and 2. Now you have 4, meaning the N64 was the first to bring 4-player multiplayer ability home to the same TV screen, where you can have 3 other buddies and yourself sit down and enjoy a game of whatever. No other console did that. PlayStation 1 tried it with a multi-tap that you had to pay an extra $30 or something like that for, and not many games supported the 4-player feature. Nintendo, the original NES itself, had a multi-tap of sorts where you can play 4-player games. I remember Nightmare on Elm Street was one of the 4-player games, but aside from that, I can't think of anything else. The N64 not only introduced it, it redefined it, it made it a necessity. Every game that came out with a 4-player multiplayer mode. Okay? What else did it introduce? I don't actually have one physically with me right now, but you can look it up if you think I'm lying. For those of you who don't know much about gaming, this little slot back here is where a memory card such as this goes. Okay, instead of into the system itself, it goes into the controller. So each player can have their own data and their own stats and their own memory uploaded into the game and into the system, rather than having just two or having your standard memory from the actual cartridge. All right. Another thing this slot was good for was the Rumble Pack. Now, if you know Star Fox 64, the Rumble Pack came with Star Fox 64. It was the first device ever to enable force feedback into your controller. So when you were playing a game and you got hit or you got killed or you got roughed up, you felt it feedback through the controller. PlayStation ended up robbing that later, but N64 introduced it. So we got 4-player multiplayer ability, analog joystick, Rumble Pack, force feedback. What else did it introduce? Fully three-dimensional graphics. No other system could do this and do it as well as Nintendo until the 64 came out. But enough about that. Those are just a few of the mainstays that we still enjoy to this day in video game, thanks to the N-Dub, the N64. But I'm going to show you just more than a handful of games. I'm not even going to talk about them. I'm going to just show you them, mention them. You can look them up if you want. And this is just a handful of my collection, okay? It's a lot of games, but it's a handful of my collection. Show you some games that make the N64 the best. Because after all, what determines a console is the quality of games it presents to the game. You have the prettiest graphics, the nicest controls, but if you don't got games, you don't got squat. Alright, so here we go. Just off the top. Star Wars, Shadows of the Empire. The greatest video game ever made, Super Mario 64. Star Fox 64, revolutionary. Super Smash Brothers, nothing more need be said. You know what this created. Oh man, Blast Corps, Wave Race, phenomenal game. Snowboard Kids 1, Snowboard Kids 2. These are all games that you should be getting or renting at least, or borrowing or something. WCW NWO Revenge, best wrestling game ever made. WWF No Mercy, also considered the best wrestling game ever made by a lot of people. One of the best first-person shooters ever, Turok Dinosaur Hunter. Castlevania 64. Castlevania in 3D, that's all I'm going to say. My favorite game of all time, on any system, at any time, Pilot Wing 64. Man, I am in love with this game. Perfect Dark. Ogre Battle 64. .1080 snowboarding. Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Tooie. Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Jet Force Gemini. Best first-person shooter of all time, period. GoldenEye 007. F-Zero X. Diddy Kong Racing. And Donkey Kong 64. Many other games I could show you. Some that I don't have, regrettably, like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Y'all know that was in my mind. And so many others, man. The N64 just had a plethora of classic, memorable, legendary games. Okay? No other system had the amount of games this game had. The system had as far as blockbusters, quality, legendary titles that we remember to this day. The PlayStation 1 didn't have it. The PlayStation 2, as many games as it has, doesn't have it. The Wii doesn't have it. The PS3 doesn't have it. The Dreamcast didn't have it. The Nintendo 64, it is the greatest gaming console of all time. And I will honestly, straight up, debate that with anybody. Alright? Of course, again, respectfully, no insults and all that, but I will debate that fact with anybody. That the N64 is the greatest console that has ever come across our lifetime. Hope you enjoyed the video. You want me to review these games? Mention it. God bless. Later.